Hello and welcome to the latest Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Poz, from the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. We've really been bouncing around the wrestling world, so many different luminaries, from Maine to Detroit to the Juggalo community and all points in between. We're very fortunate for that, but it is time. We do have to catch up on the news.
Yes, we do. Now, let's start out in the world of WoW. What is going on with the Women of Wrestling and Jeannie Buss?
Yes, always something going on. So, as we talked about in the summer, there was this massive taping in the LA area. They seemed to get support from the Chamber of Commerce. And to me, I was running the numbers. I was like, oh, did they tape a whole season over just those few days? But apparently not. And they're doing some ambitious things here. So, firstly, they're going to Vegas. And from what I understand, John, they wanted to know if you would be there along their PR list. So,
Yes,
as of this taping, there was no word if there was any tickets or hotel rooms, right, John?
correct. Nothing of as of yet.
Nothing yet. In the future,
Still waiting.
any point, reach out, Ms. Buss and team, David, I guess, David McLean. Women of Wrestling announced they'll present a special live event in Vegas on Saturday, September 28th, with live matches featuring their new superhero, Paola Mayfield, the GOAT winner, 90 Day Fiance. We'll get into that in a few minutes. For the first time and for one night only, WOW invites fans to come down to downtown Las Vegas for live matches. I have to get on the ball at the Fremont Street Experience. The matches will be nationally televised, featuring four-time champions. Okay, we know who their wrestlers are. The live event will include the introduction of, I love this, John, the Bus Belt, named fondly after co-owner and co-founder of WoW, Jeannie Buss, as a new title to compete for by the WoW superheroes. Season 3 premiered a couple of weeks ago. I love that, the Bus Belt.
Pretty cool.
So next, like one of the things notable about WoW is that they have basically just done television tapings, a little bit of maybe matches and appearances at like San Diego Comic-Con and things like that. But there was a TV Insider had an interview with some of the talents, and it said, "What do you think of WoW's decision to host live events?" And Coach said, "It's exciting. We love the fans. They provide so much energy and get so involved. The WoW fans are top tier. It's great for fans to see us live. Soon we're having our first live event outside of LA, which is this Vegas show. I hope we are able to do more and reach more of our fans in a live setting." And Candy said, "We get a lot of fans wanting us to come to our city. We want to give the fans what the fans want." So I think they've been smart about not getting out there too much because it could get expensive in terms of live events, but maybe as a special experience like they're doing in Vegas, that's an idea. Now, John, before this show, I mean, you got a press release about it as well, but were you familiar generally with Paola Mayfield?
Well, just because my wife watches that show, 90 Day Fiance, I knew who she was.
Ah, okay. So that's like, I think like that just demonstrates that how well it translates to pop culture. For like, when we're thinking inside the wrestling bubble, it's like 90 Day Fiance, who is WoW promoting, but I get the Google alerts every day. And for a while, I was getting like every time Paola Mayfield would do something related to wrestling before WoW, I would get like emails about it. And I'm like, who is this? So WoW really thinks like in a different way. So reality star Paola Mayfield body slams her way onto the WoW Women of Wrestling roster. Mayfield makes her triumphant return to pro wrestling on season 3 which premiered. So it's really like sometimes we talk about maybe they should sign, some more well-known wrestling champions and so on, whereas they pivot in a different way and they're sort of like thinking like, well, from a pop culture interest perspective, from mainstream over-the-air television, who might help us?
Yeah, definitely. Because if my wife, who hates wrestling, knows who she is, obviously other people that don't like wrestling may be like, "Whoa, she's doing wrestling now?" Yeah, but it's gonna get some attention.
Okay, so the question though is, if your wife likes the show, maybe she likes Paola or not as a character, would she be willing to like give it a try to be like, oh, she's on television, let me watch this match or let me watch this promo?
Probably like a YouTube video or highlights or something. I don't think she would watch the full show.
So 11 p.m. WLNY will not be on in your house.
No, nope, definitely not. Unfortunately, it will not be. But she'll probably watch her on 90 Day Fiance if she goes back on that show.
Sure. Um, like in a sort of in a reverse way. What was that? There was a show on the E channel where WWE had like divas on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that
Total divas.
that sort of like that sort of like attracted people, I think, like especially women, like back to like an interest in WWE.
Yeah, different though, but yeah, definitely
I
for
think it's
sure.
hard to do it the other way. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people obviously watched that show. It did some pretty good ratings for a good period of time. So it wasn't just WB fans; it was mixed of casual fans mixed in too.
It's hard to like do it in the other way. Like, what's that guy from Survivor that just wouldn't go away from TNA?
Johnny Fairplay.
Yeah, Johnny Fairplay. Like, I don't think like there was like Survivor fans that were like, okay, let's watch TNA now or order the weekly pay-per-views. Although he would get local press, so there's value in that.
For sure. As far as Pluto is concerned, what's going on with Pluto? Because obviously, a lot of more wrestling centric, right? I mean, like, can WoW, further their footprint on there? Um, what else is going on with Pluto?
Yeah, no, that's a good point with WoW's efforts in that regard. But I was really, you know, what I was thinking about when I found this story. Um, Remember when Defy Wrestling had a live special on Pluto? It
Yeah,
wasn't this summer, and then like I remember tuning into it, and then like it didn't seem to start on time, and there was something wrong with the audio, and I was like, oh man, like that always seems to happen to pro wrestling companies. Like you get a chance and like it just doesn't work
yeah.
out, and that's the end of it. And then they stopped having a wrestling channel and all of that, and now they're like more smartly, I think, like specific to particular brands. But here it looks like they're giving another shot to things. As supported by Mike Johnson at PW Insider, Pro Wrestling to return to New York City's Manhattan Center next year. Wrestling is Now, headed by Joel Maximo, was at the Manhattan Center, New York City earlier this week, locking in a Saturday 6/14 date for a live event at the Grand Ballroom. The current plan is for a number of different independent promotions, including Philadelphia's SPO, to team with Wrestling is Now and run a combination live event and fan connection with the live event streaming live on Roku.
Interesting. So Pluto is
Oh,
in, not in, but they're kind of interested in wrestling.
sorry. I think I mixed up two things there. So there's the WoW efforts and those sort of channels, and then Roku now is the one that's looking at streaming this show with Wrestling is Now,
Oh,
um, uh, it did remind me still of that Defy Wrestling situation where you sort of like have to be ready.
that's cool though, because obviously Pluto is you can get it on Roku, but Roku is adding a ton of channels and a ton of streaming channels, and a lot of them for free. Well, I mean, obviously they're going to be free, but that's pretty cool that all these different services are now having wrestling pretty much everywhere. It's crazy.
I think it's also sports has become like, depending on how you categorize, of course, pro wrestling, like sports has become like the driver for all of these different media platforms, and it really has been, right? Like since not only television, cable television, UHF, streaming, all of that sort of thing. Like where you need something like, how do you attract people to what you do? Well, if you have sports, there that they'll watch, they'll find it, right? Like if you put the Yankees on something that they never heard of or behind a paywall, people like the Yankees enough that they'll pay to watch it. So, you know who really benefited from that this year? Ion, who had the WNBA rights for pretty cheap. And then Caitlin Clark comes along, and then suddenly it's like one of the hottest things. And it's something the CW is chasing, which we'll talk about later in terms of putting, you know, a lower level of NASCAR, WWE to really like drive up their ratings too. And you even see it like with the digital networks in certain markets where the sports teams want people to be able to see their games, some of their games, besides getting rights, but like have people have access to become fans. And the digital networks are like, okay, we'll take that, and it helps people like want to find them.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. I just love that wrestling is everywhere. You know, pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm optimistic though on these like shockwave talks. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe Fox Sports 1, but I like I've seen like they're like Tony Khan is talking to ABC. Like, when would that happen exactly? An hour of AEW on ABC Network?
right, right. Yeah, definitely don't see it happen. As far as Anthem is concerned, though, obviously, you know, Access TV, everything else. But what's going on with Anthem, and then what's going on with TNA?
Yeah, so of course, whenever we're looking at a wrestling company, I like to look at the parent and like what that parent is doing. Like, unless they're like a small part to a gigantic conglomerate, let's say with Bushiroad in New Japan. Not everything Bushiroad does is as interesting as it relates to pro wrestling, but their overall health. But Anthem is still a smaller company, so when they do something, it's sort of notable. So Anthem is you know, sort of digging deeper into the Canadian media market. Hollywood Suite Inc. Apparently is a popular series of stations in Canada, throughout Canada, that airs like older movies and so on. So it shows that there's still an Anthem appetite and ability to acquire content. So a good sign, I would say, for a healthy company. Now, not even TNA can avoid the realities of the news as we're recording this, and hopefully by the time you hear this, all this will have passed without too much damage. Reschedule a couple shows in Spartanburg, South Carolina, due to Hurricane Helene. So they're moving the tapings to a Sunday and Monday, so just a couple days up, where the tickets from Friday shows are good Sunday, Saturday shows are good Monday. You know, not everyone would necessarily be available to attend, but what are you going to do? You have to make the most of a difficult situation. Now, just catching up a little bit, San Antonio's Boeing Center, that Victory Road was a sold-out show. Cage Match had it listed as 2,000. Now, when you look ahead, 2,000 tickets. Now, when you look ahead to the Detroit market and Bound for Glory, the floor portion that's been open, most of the floor is sold out. So there's something going on with TNA and their premium live events where there is interest, where we've seen it a number of times. It wasn't just the Montreal market, you know, not just a one-off experience there. So interesting to see how that continues. Some people have been attributing it to WWE involvement. I think it's a little bit of that, but I think TNA is sort of finding its rhythm, especially for the big events. Interesting that there's a little bit of a trademark dispute going on between WWE and TNA with the Santino Marella trademark. I don't think that would necessarily affect things between their promotional abilities. And also looking at Anthem's ability to acquire sponsorship, Invicta and Anthem all-female outlet signed Chaco Flacos, El Cicero brand of non-alcoholic cocktails as official craft canned mocktail. beginning with the Invicta 57. Invicta events will feature the signage on the cage canvas and corner pads. There'll be product placement in the DJ booth, promotion inside the arenas, and commercials on CBS Sports Networks. The ring announcements will spotlight the drink as the official sponsor of that show and will be branded a homepage.
Wow, interesting. Never heard of them, but that's very interesting. Always great to get sponsors and get their name out there. But very interesting sponsor there.
Yeah, and you can drink as many as you want and not lose touch with reality, I guess.
Yes, love that. Love that. What's going on with the NWA? Because are they with CW? Are they not? Are they on the app? Are they not on the app?
Yeah, so like when we first heard that NXT was going to the CW and the CW was affiliated with the NWA, like the first thought was like, okay, there's no way that the NWA would still be on the CW, right? Even if it was on the app. And then there was no news. And we kept seeing these promotional posters for upcoming NWA tapings, and they all featured the CW until they didn't. So NWA Power listed as leaving the CW app, according to PW Insiders Mike Johnson. All of the NWA's Power episodes, including this week's episode that was added, are currently listed as expiring in 6 days, which would mean that it would be all gone by October 1st. So by the time you hear this, same day, NXT debuts on the CW network. PW Insider has reached out to the NWA for comment and for word on where that material may be migrating. Next week's episode of Power would showcase the NWA's. So that was a little while ago. So you can see here from something that we have, John, which is that the same shows in October that are promoted in Tampa, one originally had the CW logo and one doesn't. So what can they do now to distribute in this interim, right? We kept hearing Billy Corgan saying, like, we have 2 deals with television networks, and then depending how you counted the CW, maybe they had 1, and then that there was another deal, and then nothing happened with it. So I guess they're going back to YouTube. I don't know how Rumble has grown as like a media platform. It seemed to be something there for a little while, especially like given their not necessarily Billy Corgan's, but like sort of like who they were spotlighting, like sort of political leanings. It seemed like to connect like with Rumble, it's like a potential way to distribute their content. But I guess the simplest thing to do is go back to YouTube until you figure it out. What would you do, John?
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess like the easy thing to do and maybe the most accessible thing would be YouTube. And I feel like when they first started, when they were doing the YouTube, that really kind of worked out well for them, I thought.
That's a great point. You're right. Those were like very buzzworthy episodes. And then it seemed like about the time that they did the Crockett Cup with like Ring of Honor. And there was something to that. Like they had that right balance of like, obviously mostly nostalgia, but a little bit of like a cool feel, like a retro feel, but well produced at the same time. So I don't know. I think they have the resources, of course, not to necessarily panic. One of the things that now that I'm thinking about it, they kept signing all these people. Like there seemed like every day there was multiple announcements of signings. And like, again, like no shade on any of the talent, anyone that's making money and earning a living because of that is great. But like, it seemed like they were signing talents that no one was necessarily bidding on, meaning that like no other national or international promotions would be seeking to lock up such talent. I mean, any of those talents could get bookings, live events anywhere in the US or whatever it may be. But like, it was like, what are you doing? What's your point? And I think a lot of modern NWA has been like my question for that. Like, what are you doing? And what's your point? I guess. Not to be too dim on it, but one of the things that they are doing, and I definitely get their point, is that Billy Corgan makes Tampa the TV home of the NWA Wrestling. Paul Guzzo writes from the Times of Tampa. I just grabbed some excerpts from the article. Nearly 4 decades since TV studio wrestling was last a part of Tampa, Corgan has brought it back through the NWA. The first filmed episodes of Power at WEDU PBS in February 2023. They shot there again this January, and then in April. Next month, the promotion returns, making it official. Tampa's PBS affiliate studio is the new home of NWA Power. We're excited to welcome the NWA to produce Power and host in-person matches at our state-of-the-art production studios, said Paul Grove, president and CEO of WEDU PBS. The NWA team has been incredibly professional. It's been a pleasure to support Tampa's vibrant wrestling community. On October 5th and 6th, the NWA will shoot around 6 hours of footage that will be broken into 12 episodes for the series. That's streamed, as of that point, it's streamed on the CW network. Once production wraps, the NWA will hit the road for larger venues, including the Halloween show at the Robarts Arena in Sarasota. The NWA will return to WEDU sometime next year to film another season. WEDU was appealing to us because of Tampa's long and storied history with wrestling, NWA spokesperson Paul Pratt said. NWA leans so heavily into its extremely powerful and storied history. Tampa really represents a huge part of that for us. Today's NWA will still uses that studio format. A wrestling ring and television set are constructed inside that fits between 100 and 150 fans. So that's interesting to know because we're never sure exactly how many fit in. The small format puts more pressure on the performers to make their scripted violence look legitimate. It's more challenging for the talent to win the audience over in that kind of environment than it is in a much bigger environment because you're quite literally in their lap. It's a make or break situation. It's also a different experience for the fans. If people want to see the stars up close and feel like they're influencing a TV product for wrestling, you can't do that at a stadium or show or arena. But when you are in the audience, your voice is quite literally heard on the air. You get to interact with the stars in a way that I just don't think the most modern fans have experienced. So that seems like a really smart idea. However, they want to keep things going. So however they'll distribute this, but to have a specific venue that they could work from, because although I haven't compared like one studio to another, because they've taped in a number of them from Nashville to Atlanta to here in Tampa, maybe they could keep their equipment there, and it just seems simpler for continuity. Maybe the people that are at one show, you could promote to them the next one, and just move forward in a smoother way rather than the same type of taping anywhere in the country. Now, the NWA has sold out a show in New York City for the first time, potentially, since the 1960s. I had to tag in our friend Al Getz, wrestling historian and actuary, to confirm this, where I originally thought like maybe this is the first time the NWA has ever sold out a show in New York City, but he had a good point that WWF or Capital Wrestling has been under the auspices of the NWA at various points. So depending on how you count it, MSG shows have certainly sold out, but for a number of years. So just a small show at a school in Queens. So the NWA has more. There was a couple interviews with Billy Corgan that I wanted to reflect on before we finish up the NWA segment. The NWA has more voices. We're here to write hit songs and win at the top level. I just had a discussion earlier today with an as yet unnamed famous network, and the discussion was centered around the fact that I explained to them that there's nothing trendy about the NWA. This is what the wrestling business was built on: mainstream appeal from the little kids to the grandma. And in another interview, as a wrestling impresario, Corgan also feels constrained by wokeness. We're in this weird straitjacket where we have to dance around the heel's greatest weapons because the heel isn't allowed to say the horrible things that would get you canceled. In a movie, it's okay for the character to kill the uncle, but if the character said that thing to the uncle that would get him canceled, he couldn't be in the movie. He took a beat, but murder is okay. So that probably helps to inform Corgan's booking decisions as well, where we think why is he platforming all of these people that are saying terrible things? But it doesn't mean necessarily that he agrees with them. It's just being used as a plot line device. But I think Corgan is very set in his ways in terms of ways of wanting to do things. So that's both a positive, but it's also a challenge for a company like the NWA moving forward.
Now, as far as New Japan Pro Wrestling is concerned, what's the latest on New Japan? Are they selling some tickets or what?
So just a little look at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium show in November, which I haven't heard much about, but just took a look into the ticket sales about a week or two ago. So they haven't been on sale that long, but you can't see the whole map at once. But when you click into the map, even like in the front row, there's plenty of seats remaining. So the future of New Japan in the US, in terms of running live events, is still a question mark. I think, like we've talked about, that they're doing things as best as possible right now. The right venue selection, the right markets, but I don't know if the appetite is there as much. People don't talk about New Japan in the way that they used to, and as the alternative brands, even AEW is generally struggling to sell tickets.
Now, as far as Sukeban is concerned, what's the latest on them? Are they still running shows on the stage? Are they going elsewhere? What's going on with Sukeban?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, like, okay, are they still at this? Like, you don't hear too much until you hear a lot, because they are good at getting press in a different way from WoW, but also good at getting like media that's very different from pro wrestling, focusing on the fashion and women's centric type of media, pop culture in a different way. So they're going to York Hall in London on October 10th. The London event follows Sukeban's sold-out nights in New York, Miami, and LA, right? Like, if you were like to be like, what are the trendy cities in the US? Where Commander Nakajima successfully defended the Sukeban World Championship against Crush U in front of a crowd of 2,200 fans. Another 3 million watching live on TikTok. In London, Saribam will challenge Commander Nakajima in the main event for the championship, designed by Mark Newson. Sukeban ring announcer Kunichi Nomura will return for the 5-fight card and be joined by the league's legendary commissioner, Bull Nakano. Pat McGrath will create new makeup looks for the competing wrestlers, while the London brand Aries will release special limited edition merchandise at the fight. Artists Hizgi and Satimis have developed new manga illustrations to build the storylines ahead of the event. So, as you could tell, even from the description, their focus is very different. Now, my guess, and total speculation, I think that they've lost a lot of money on this.
Wow.
It just seems like running around to the biggest cities, and you have all these designers, and you're flying people in, and there's not that much buzz. And I've clicked into the TikTok, and it certainly wasn't 3 million people watching concurrently. Like, I don't know how long they can do this. Maybe there's a stockpile, or maybe they are making money, like we might not be seeing it, right? Because there's the maybe there's interest from these designers or something like that creates its own economy. I don't know, but it just doesn't make sense, from the way that I understand, pro wrestling business.
What is going on with Triller and AGBA? What's the latest on that? I feel like a lot of news.
Speaking about money, and again, I'm still a Triller stockholder. Oh, sorry, an AGBA stockholder. I think more happily so at the moment, but kind of like riding that lightning, just to kind of take a little risk, see what happens. So, kind of like looking for signs here, John. So, one of the things we know is that AEW is not on what's that called? Warner Brothers Bleacher Report app anymore. Their pay-per-views will be distributed by payperview.com and Triller at the moment. We keep hearing talk about Max, but that's something else. So AEW, which has the means, is not afraid. There's been no issues we're aware of that to like go in with Triller more or to be more reliant on it. But there's other signs of trouble, right? Like Bare Knuckle is something that's partly owned by Triller and really was one of their like 10 poles in terms of like the Triller fighting element. And then Triller had announced a couple weeks ago, exciting news, Bare Knuckle is teaming up with DAZN for a multi-year broadcast partnership, bringing the action to fans like never before. So your biggest competitor worldwide now has the rights to one of your most visible products. So David Titrault, president of Triller Sports and chief business officer of Bare Knuckle, played a pivotal role in securing this partnership, drawing on his extensive experience with DAZN from his tenure at Golden Boy, where he was architect of the landmark Canelo Alvarez deal with DAZN. Tetrault emphasized the importance of DAZN's global reach. This partnership marks a new era for Bare Knuckle. We are forming a steering committee composed of top executives from both DAZN and Bare Knuckle to take the partnership to new heights. With our combined expertise in media and entertainment, global marketing, and content distribution, we will redefine combat sports worldwide. Most people didn't even notice that this happened, by the way. But like for those that did it, it seems like a little bit embarrassing because Triller has a big reach, and you're now giving it or selling it to someone else. Now, also, I don't know if this is attributable to Triller in any way. K1, which was distributing their pay-per-view content outside of Japan, or at least outside of Asia, through Triller, is no longer doing so. And Violet J had talked about on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of episodes ago, that it was almost like the Triller people were trying to talk them out of signing with them, that they were late on payments and things like that. Now, one piece of positive news, at least announced by Triller, is that big news from AGBA. Shareholders have approved the merger with Triller, bringing it closer to completion. AGBA will soon be re-domiciled in Delaware as Triller Group Inc., with a new NASDAQ listing expected shortly. Exciting times ahead for the future of Triller Group in the tech and social media space.
What about what Violent J was saying about Twitter? What about his comments? I mean, about Triller.
Yes. So his comment was really like something that reinforced it, because like it was interesting. Like some people were saying like, we are getting paid on time. Other people were saying like there's been issues and so on. But it was interesting from Violent J saying like he had a meeting, he was open to Triller, but they were saying like, we've had some issues with payment and so on, like trying to like tell him, as far as we understood it, try and tell him to like be cautious with that. Like you don't often hear something like that.
Yeah, that was like kind of off the cuff. He wasn't even like thinking, he was just saying it. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. But AEW is using Triller more now, so weird.
Yeah, so that was like it's not all like dim, because AEW obviously has the resources to like choose among a number of platforms, and if there were any issues, I don't think that they would like redouble their efforts, right? Like if they were behind on paying them. For one thing, I think like what I would speculate happens is that once you start owing money to people, you just start prioritizing like who can I like push back and who do I have to like pay right away. And it's important for them to have AEW on good terms, because when AEW runs a pay-per-view, that's that's the money that comes into their pocket right away. So it gives them more revenue to work with, even if they have to delay things in other ways.
And the merger went through with AGBA Group and Triller?
Not yet, but they are the shareholders of AGBA have approved this proposed merger, which is expected to close shortly. So that's a long story.
Now, what's going on with CW, WWE, NXT?
Yeah, I'm just like trying to, and by the time people listen to this, you'll have a number. But I'm just trying to like get like a sense, a baseline of like a number that we can work with and expect. And I think it's around the same number that we've talked about already. So the NASCAR Infinity Race averaged 906,000 viewers and peaked at more than 1 million viewers. So at least we know, like for the CW, that they can achieve that number. Because I think for the first NXT, I think that they'll get that number. I think following that, they'll probably be like, it'll hold up for a little while, but then within a few weeks, I think they'll be down to like 550 to like 650, maybe 700. But like the first week is most interesting. So somebody had put together a spreadsheet of sports viewership. So of NASCAR Infinity, of course, was number one. And then some of their other high profile stuff, Pac 12, 541,000, the NASCAR Countdown Show. On the same day they did their breakout record was 540,000. Actually, those were all the same night. So pretty good night for them. Inside the NFL, 489,000. Pac-12, 452,000. ACC, 322. LIV Golf in the low to high 100,000s numbers recently. Now, last season, in terms of their non-scripted programming, Penn and Teller did about 620,000. Whose Line Is It? 400 something thousand. Police 24/7. Everyone wants to do those police shows. Just under 500,000. Hostage Rescue 300,000, and so on. We don't have to belabor it. And some of their sitcoms at the high number do in the 500,000s, and the low number just above or below like 200,000. So I would say NXT first week 1 million, week 2 700, week 5 550,000. What do you think, John?
700,000, maybe something like that. Could do something decent like that. I just thought it was really interesting that they're putting that WrestleMania behind the curtain special on there too. I feel like that could do a good number.
Oh yeah, good point. So that was something that they just dropped as a surprise. That one, I think it could. I don't think that I think they're just sort of doing it to like grease the wheels a little bit. I would guess that one will do like 3 to 500. Maybe I'm a little bit more pessimistic on it. Maybe if like they had promoted, like you have like the NXT show, and then you're like, oh, Saturday night we're gonna have this other show, so people are used to the station. That would be something that they'd want to see, and so on. Whereas this is kind of like getting dropped cold. It was like tweeted. I'm not sure how many shows that they've said like come and watch it. It's not like the biggest deal one way or another, but I'm definitely curious to see that as like the first CW number.
And Randy Orton will be on the second show, and obviously Punk will be on the first show. So there will be WWF superstars on the NXT shows as least the first few weeks, anyway.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised how conservative they've been. Maybe it's like to be allay any concerns. Maybe USA Network or Netflix wouldn't be yet, but like USA Network being like, hey, we're paying for this now. Like we want our stars on our show. So like you have to be a little bit careful with that. Whereas like when it was on USA, like they're like, okay, like it's all on a network. You can pump it up. But like if you're migrating people over and you're like, if you're like, okay, the return of Brock Lesnar, special appearance by The Undertaker, one of John Cena's 36 appearances, like all for the premiere. Like I feel like that's something that they would have done like not all the things, but like that idea back in the day.
Yeah. Well, remember that when they were competing against AEW that one night, Undertaker was there, Cena was there, Cody was there. I mean, they loaded up that show, so they could have probably done the same thing for
Yeah.
CW.
I think the only difference though is that that was on USA.
Right. Right. Yep. Yep.
So here it's like now it's like a competitive network or media company or whatever.
Yep.
So not the biggest deal, but the fact that they can bring people over is good, and I think that they'll do well as they usually do for the first episode. I know it's a different world, but if you go back and look at like the first like ECW on Sci-Fi type of premieres, or there was like a third rate WWE show that wasn't like a different brand that premiered also. Like those are like, it was like 3 million people, so
Yeah.
they can,
Yep.
people are willing to check it out. It doesn't take them long to realize. And we've seen this with AEW too. Like you could do like a good premiere number, but it doesn't take people long to realize like this isn't the A show, or this isn't the
Yes.
talent that we're looking for.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. So let's wrap this bad boy up and head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2-Man Power Trip. Lavie, what about you?
Follow me on X, Lavie Marg, LAVIE MARG. Join our LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business. Check out my long form articles on lioncubjobsearch.com.
All right. Thank you, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.